Hi, Woodchick Gardener. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live on White Davy Gardening and Worm Farm. So, today we are going to be discussing beneficial garden pests. Oh, hi, Han White. How are you guys doing? Yeah, so we're going to be looking at some beneficial garden pests. Now, there are various types of insects that can be found in the average backyard garden, numbering into the thousands, most of which are either harmless or they are beneficial to your garden. And then there are those that are the pests. You're well, just tired. Okay. Hopefully, you'll get some rest soon. Thank you for taking the time out, although you're so tired. Right. So, as it relates to the beneficial insects that can be found in your gardens or close by, they fall into three categories. They are either pollinators, and they can be one or more of these categories. So they're not confined to any just one category. So they're either pollinators, parasitoids, or they are predators. So as we go through the discussion, we're going to be looking at each of these three groups. I call them the beneficial three P's because each group starts with P. Yes, so for the pollinators, what are they? Well, any insects that actually take pollen from the from the male anther to the female stigma of a flower, resulting in fertilization, is referred to as a pollinator. Now, there are many, many different types of pollinators. Some are specific to the type of flowers that they pollinate. Now, pollinators can be insects, they can be invertebrates, and those invertebrates also include some non-bat mammals. Now, insect pollinators includes various types of bees and pollen wasps. It includes mosquitoes, various types of flies, ants, beetles, moths, butterflies, and the list goes on. For vertebrates, pollinators, these mostly consist of birds and bats. Hi, CC. Yes, these mostly consist of birds and bats, but they include non-bat mammals such as rodents, monkeys, possums, lemurs, and even some members of the lizard family are actually pollinators. Okay, and White, you might fall asleep. That's okay. I appreciate the effort you're putting in to support the live. Yes. Now, some pollinators have long beaks, and so these ones are very ideal for pollinating flowers that tend to have a long throat. So some birds, like the hummingbirds and others, are perfect for those flowers that tend to have deep throat. Now, the wind is also a pollinator because it blows pollen from male plant to female plant. So the wind is a pollinator, and guess what? So are we. Yes, humans are pollinators because when we don't see enough of these pollinators going around, then we and pollinate the plants for ourselves to ensure that we have enough to harvest. Okay, you will leave the live playing just in case you fall asleep. Thanks, Han White. Sadly, though, our pollinators are dwindling for various reasons. So, what can we do to protect or pollinators. There are quite a few steps that we can take to protect them or to attract them into our gardens. So, for one, we want to avoid using harmful pesticides in our garden because sometimes we use pesticides to kill the pest, but then it's not specific to the type of pest that it kills in some cases. So we want to avoid pesticides that will harm the beneficial insects. Another step that we can take is to diversify the plants that we have in our garden by planting plants that are going to produce different size flowers, different shape flowers, different color flowers, because pollinators are attracted to different flowers based on the color, based on the texture of the flower, based on the shape of the flower, based on the size of the flower. So there are various things that attract pollinators to flowers. So we want to diversify what we are planting. Another step that we can take is to grow native flowers because native flowers naturally is going to attract native pollinators. And it's the easiest way to get pollinators is to ensure that you're getting the ones that are native to your environment. Oh, hi, LP. Yes, you want, as far as it's possible, to get the ones that are native to your environment because they can survive harsh weathers. They find ways to overwinter. Whereas if you bring in other pollinators, they might not be able to survive the various weathers or temperatures. So for that reason, you might have to keep bringing them in yearly in order to have them pollinate in your garden. So planting native flowers is a very effective way of attracting these pollinators. Now, another thing that we can do is to plant a variety of flowers that bloom at different times throughout the year because there are some flowers that will bloom early spring, some early summer, late summer, or fall. So, and depending on where you are, if it is a tropical environment, then you have warm weather all year round. So, pollinators can find the flowers throughout the year. But for regions that tend to have drastic changes in temperatures, it is good to spread out the type of flowers that you plant to ensure that on a continuous basis there is flowers for these pollinators. And that include even your vegetables that produce flowers because pollinators are attracted to these as well. And sometimes we might not be among those who like flowers, or you might be someone who like flowers, but you don't necessarily have a large garden, and so you might want to focus on planting vegetables and fruits. So in that case, what you can do then is look for type of flowers that are edible. That way it won't seem as if it is a wasted space. It wouldn't be wasted anyway because it is attracting pollinators. So you look for vegetables that produce flowers. You can look for fruits that have different type of flowers. So there's many little steps that you can take to attract these pollinators. And it doesn't really have to be a lot of flowers if you don't have space, but having them there is important because even, for example, if you're growing vegetables like your kale or your spinach, you might say, okay, these don't really produce a lot of flowers, but in order to produce seeds, if you're someone who want to save seeds from what you're growing, then you need those pollinators even for these things like spinach because they need pollinators in order for the flowers that they produce to produce seeds for you. So you want to do everything that you can to protect and attract these pollinators. Let's see, LP says the pollinators really do love borage. Oh, okay. That's good to know. I've never even seen borage, so I don't know what it looks like. But that's good to know. Yeah, I've seen so many videos or hear people talking about borage. So I guess I would have to research what it is like, what it can, how you use it, and things like that to see if it is something that I would like to grow. See, I finally ate a flower, and they really do taste like cucumber. They they're big plants. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I haven't. They're pretty. Definitely recommend. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. But maybe I should jot it down so that I don't forget. Oh, they have loads of blossom. Good. So borage, is it a herb or is it a vegetable? Okay, so yes. So we were saying that okay, it is considered an herb. Okay, thanks for that. Right. So another thing that we can do is to provide a source of water or several sources of water for these pollinators. So it doesn't have to be a lot of water because you don't really want something that is going to be attracting a lot of mosquitoes and stuff. But we can provide a bit of water so that these pollinators will have access to it. Now, beneficial insects need to feed too. And so, since they feed on nectar and they feed on pests and other things, expect that you're going to have some amount of imperfection in your garden from these pollinators because as they feed on your flowers and the nectar of your flowers, for example, your flowers is not going to be looking as vibrant as it did before. But it is very important for you to have these pollinators. So you should expect to have a bit of imperfection in your garden because of these pollinators. So you want to avoid doing anything that will actually put them in danger because putting them in danger is the same as robbing ourselves because without them the plants won't produce. Now another thing that we can do to protect these pollinators is to mow the lawn less. I know there are a lot of people who enjoy seeing their lawn at a specific in specific condition at all times. So sometimes you will see neighbors mowing the yard like every day or every 2 days or once per week. But doing that affect some of these beneficial insects because there are some of them that actually live in the grass in your lawn. And so if you are mowing constantly, you're disturbing their habitat, which means that their population is going to become less. So allowing a little time in between mowing your lawn will allow them to build up their population. Okay, so now we have looked at pollinators. So we are going to be looking at parasitoids. Now, what are parasitoids? It is any organism that actually has its young either on or inside of another organism, using them as host. Now, parasitoids can be both predator or they can be parasites. So parasitoids, they are selective in what they eat. So they will have, for example, a particular type of plants that are, sorry, not plant, but particular type of pest that they will feed on. And they tend to stick to that type of pest and any other close relative of that pest. And they are very specific too in the life stage of the host that they are going to be feeding on. So if they love larvae, they will stick to larvae. If they like the eggs, they will stick to eggs. Or if they like a combination of eggs or larvae, but they're very specific are very selective in what they will use as host, but they prey on a wide variety of hosts. So there are different varieties or different species of parasitoids. Now it is only the female parasitoids that actually look for host to use. The adults are usually feeding on nectar or they feed on prey. Now the host will live until the parasitoid young ones are actually fully grown before they die. The parasitoids can sometimes prevent the larval host from actually developing until the young parasitoid actually reach the mature state. Now, what are some examples of parasitoids? Most of them are wasps, bees, and flies, although some species of beetles and moths or twisted wings insects have been identified as parasitoids, but for the most part, they fall under wasp, bees, flies, etc. Now, parasitoids use eggs, they use larvae, nymph, pupates as their hosts. So they don't really use adult pests as their host. They tend to use the eggs, larvae, the nymphs, and the pupae for their host. Now, there is said to be over 500,000 species of parasitic wasp. Interesting, isn't it? Over 500,000 species. The young parasitoids are actually the deadliest. They're deadlier than their adults because they tend to feed on and eventually kill the host. Whereas most times the adults does not necessarily feed on the does not necessarily feed on the host. Let's see. LP says last year I found a tomato hornworm with a bunch of eggs stuck on it, like a pincushion. I was so excited. It remained there paralyzed for a couple of months. Well, you make me laugh. Yeah, but I know what you mean because they are so dangerous, are so damaging to the plants. When you see something that gets them under control, you're quite happy to see that. Sometimes you might feel sorry for them, but at the same time, you're very happy to see that there is some other creatures getting them under control. Yeah, so beneficial predators we're going to be looking at now. So beneficial predators are organisms that actually eat other organisms, such as garden pests. Now, these predators help to keep the pest population under control. Now, the number of beneficial pests that can be found in any garden is endless and can be found naturally in gardens, or it can be added manually, or they can be added manually to the garden. The same method that I mentioned before that can be used to attract and protect pollinators, these same methods can be used to attract the parasitoids and the predators as well. Parasitoids also fall under the categories of predators. Yeah, so the same method can be used to attract and to protect them. Now, there are times when beneficial insects that we would like to have in our garden is close by, but then they are not necessarily in our garden. Now, there are things that we can do to attract them. But they will only come into our garden if they have something, if the garden is attractive enough for them. So whether it is pests that they're going to be preying on, or whether it is plants that is going to be attracting them, for especially for the beneficial, for the pollinators. But if we don't have what it takes to attract them, then they won't stay in our garden. See, Healthy says, I have a lot of wasp and hornet flying around my garden, crawling on the leaves. They are looking for worms and caterpillars. My brassicas have worms on them and some holes, but I really think there are less than last year because of all the hornet hunting them. Okay. Yes, because in that photo that I put up the other day asking if anyone could identify that insect that you say is a wasp, they weren't on the plant previously because I looked at the plant even the previous day. But what happened is that those Chinese cabbage that they're on had some worms, some cabbage moth, not the moth, the cabbage worms on them. I squished some of them, but then there might be others. So that is what is actually attracting these wasps to the Chinese cabbage at the moment. So I was pretty happy when I heard that it was actually a parasitic wasp. Yeah, so I'm hoping that at least the population of them will grow so that they will help me to keep these guys, these cabbage worm, under control. By the way, thanks for that information, LP. Now, the region that we live in will also play a part in the type of beneficial insects that we have. So, for example, if you're living in tropical areas, the chances are that you're going to have a really wide variety of these beneficial insects. There are some insects that might prefer cooler weather, some might prefer the warmer weather. So the type of beneficial insect that we have will determine the type of temperatures or seasons that we have will determine the type of beneficial insects that we have around. So some are able to overwinter in extreme cold or extreme hot conditions, some aren't. So sometimes we might have to bring in some of these beneficial insects, sorry. Lord, I must be going crazy. Seem as if I'm having a tongue twister today. Yeah, so sometimes we'll have to bring in these beneficial insects. Sometimes you bring them in, and depending on what you bring in, you might not necessarily have to be doing this on a continuous basis. Sometimes you might have to do it yearly, depending on the type of insect that we bring in and the type of condition that they can survive in. So we're going to be looking at a list of common predators that we can find in our garden or we can purchase to put them in our garden. So, and we're going to be looking at the type of pest that they actually feed on. So, the ladybug feeds on things like aphids, mealybugs, scales, mites, whiteflies, and eggs of some insects. The lacewings, they feed on aphids, spider mites, leaf uppers, thrips, moths, eggs, red mites, caterpillars, etc. Let's see, LP says, no problem. It was another viewer on YouTube who actually identified that what exactly it was. I went and looked it up. Okay, okay, yeah. Rubber fly feeds on flying insects such as beetles, butterflies, leaf uppers, grasshoppers, and The larvae of these rubber flies feed on eggs. The I don't know if I'm pronouncing this properly. The tachi or tachinid flies, the larvae feed on larvae of things such as the brown tail. They feed on the gypsy moth. They feed on sawflies, cutworms, armyworms, Mexican bean beetles, grasshoppers, European corn borers, tent caterpillars, and Japanese beetles. But I don't know what they are. I've never really seen them, so I'm gonna have to look them up to see what they actually look like. Because there are so many insects in my garden, and most of them I cannot identify. Some of them are so small I can't even see what they look like, and they won't stick around long enough for me to put them under my magnifying glass to see what they look like actually. But then there are so many different ones, different sizes. Some of them definitely are flies, but I don't know what type of flies. So I'm gonna have to look up this tachinid flies to see what it is actually, if what it looks like, find out if I have it in my garden. Last year I had quite a lot of different fly-looking creatures in my garden. They tend to, I don't know if it is my carrot that I allowed to seed, if that is what was attracting them, because last year was the only time I saw so many different types of flies, and they were all just on the carrots that I allowed to go into seeding. And this year I don't have any carrots going into seeding, and I haven't seen most of them. So, yeah. Predator wasp, they're mostly tiny. They're so tiny that sometimes you can have 100 of them or more just in the palm of your hand. They're very, very tiny. They come in various sizes because they are large ones, large, almost like regular wasp. So they're the tiny ones. They include things like the trichogramma, the braconid, the calcid, and also the ichimum. But these ones, these tiny ones, they actually don't sting. Now, these predator wasp feeds on the eggs of cabbage loopers, cutworms, tomato hornworms, aphids, scales, mealybugs, armyworms, gypsy bug, or gypsy moths, mealybugs, spruce, alfalfa caterpillar, and budworms. So quite a wide variety that they feed on. So predator wasps such as the solitary wasp, the paper or social wasp, the hornet and yellow jacket wasp tend to feed more on things like flies, caterpillars, and other larvae. The yellow jacket and the hornet, these two are the most likely to sting. They're very aggressive. Now, the soldier bug, these tend to feed on Mexican bean beetles, cabbage loopers, and cabbage worms. The damselflies, these feeds on the tinier insects like the mites and the aphids. They do feed on the larvae of leaf hoppers and other larvae. The big eye bug, it feeds on aphids, Mexican bean beetles, Lygos bugs, spider mites, mealybugs, and other insects' eggs. Okay, and the dragonfly, these don't really feed on a lot of insects in your garden, but they do get things like mosquitoes and the mosquito larvae under control. The spined soldier bugs, these are very fierce predators. They tend to feed on a wide variety of pests. So they will feed on things like caterpillars and beetles. These are actually the larvae of caterpillars and beetles are actually their favorite meal, but they will also feed on things like the Colorado potato butt beetles, the Mexican bean beetle, the tent caterpillar, grasshoppers, aphids, cabbage worms, and cucumber beetles. So these feed on a wide variety of pests. The minute pirate bugs, they both the bug and the nymph will actually feed on spider mites, on thrips, whiteflies, corn borers, small caterpillars, leaf hoppers, nymph, and other small insects and their eggs. So these are the predators that are most common in a lot of garden. There are other common ones, but these are just the few that I have listed here. Now, a lot of these beneficial insects may or may not be available in your region or my region for that matter. So, if you want to have these beneficial, oh, hi, Melanie. If you want to have these beneficial insects in your garden and they're not readily available, then you can use the methods discussed previously of attracting them if they are native to your environment. Or if not, then you can actually purchase them from suppliers, whether online or locally, and just add them to your garden. And as I mentioned before, sometimes they might not be able to survive year round in your region, and so you might have to purchase them annually in order to ensure that you get the benefits from them. But for whatever pest that you may face in your garden, the chances are if those pests are native to your environment, then you're going to have predators that feed on these pests that are native to your environment. So if that is the case, then all you have to do is just make sure that you take the various steps of attracting them and doing your best to protect them so that the species does not go extinct. Right, so this is the information that I put together for you guys for today on how we can. Oh, hi, Herb and Kiki. Yeah, so this is the information that I put together for you today on how we can, about the beneficial insects, what we can do to protect them and what we can do to attract them in our gardens. Because having them in our garden save us so much time because then we don't have to be going around worrying about all these pests because we know that the beneficial insects are there to take care of them. We know that the pollinators are there to ensure that we have a nice produce, nice harvest. Yes, and then it saves us time from having to be running around trying to find pesticides, whether organic or otherwise, to deal with these pests. So it is very important that we do all that we can to both protect and attract these beneficial insects in our garden. So what type of beneficial insects do you have in your region? Do you know? And sometimes we see so many insects in our garden, but sometimes we don't really know if they are good or if they're bad. And sometimes because we see the damages that a lot of these pests cause in the garden, they can be so similar to each other that sometimes it is hard to identify what pest we are dealing with because not all of them you can see with your naked eye. So sometimes you will have these pests, but you don't know what type of pest actually is affecting the garden. The good thing though is that a lot of the homemade remedies that we use, yes, I agree with you, urban girl, they're hard to identify. Yes, but the good thing is that the type of pesticides that we use in our garden is effective against more than one type of pest. So can you imagine if each pesticide was only specific to one type of pest, how many different pesticides would have to be used in our garden? But thank God for these beneficial insects that and these flowers that we can plant that can help us to protect our garden from some of these pests. The only sad thing is that when we plant our garden, we might prepare for pests based on the type that we've had previously. Sometimes what we prepare is effective, and so we don't see those pests, but then we end up with other type of pests. So the problem always go on and on. It's hard to really get them under control because, and especially when you're adding new plants to your garden. But yeah, I guess that's just how it is. That is why it is so nice that we can do things to attract these beneficial insects to the garden, and we can plant other crops that will actually help to repel some of these pests. Let's see. Melanie said, last year I had lots of ladybugs, but this year I hardly see any. Yes, I'm having the same issue, Melanie, because last year they were just all over the place, and now this year I cannot say that I've honestly seen even 10 ladybugs this year. Last year they were everywhere in my leaves that I collect for my worms. They were just crawling. They were just everywhere. There were so many of them. But this year I don't know what happened. Why we're not seeing them. But then I know that from my region, having a lot of snow is actually good. Although I hate it, but it is actually good because it provides insulation for a lot of these beneficial insects so that they can actually overwinter underneath it. But then this year, or what should I say, this winter, we didn't have a lot of snow. We had 2 to 3 feet of snow from one snowstorm in October. After that, we had very little snow. And for the first part of the winter, up until the end of December, it was pretty warm. And then the latter part of the winter was pretty cold. So I don't know if that's why I'm not seeing a lot of pollinators and a lot of these ladybugs, but they're far less. I don't think I've seen 10 this year at all. It's actually crazy. I'm not really surprised about the beneficial insects like the pollinators because every year they seem to be getting less and less. But the ladybugs, they were always plentiful, so I don't know what is going on with that. But anyway, hopefully, wherever they are, they will build up the population and come back again next year. Let's see. Oh, LP saying hi to Urban Girl. Yes. It's actually sad for what's happening with these beneficial insects. Oh, your yard is full of pollinators. That's awesome. Yes, maybe you can send some of them my way. Yeah, I don't know. The pollinators are just, they're scanty this year. And I decided this year that I'm going to be growing a lot of flowers for the first time because I don't really have a lot of garden space, but because some of them are good at repelling pests and attracting these beneficial insects. So because of that, I decided that okay, I'm gonna be sacrificing some of my garden space for these flowers. And then I hear that a lot of them are actually edible, so I try to get the edible ones, and I try to get the ones that are going to attract or repel the pests that are most prevalent in my area. But for whatever reason, maybe I don't have enough experience with flowers, but pretty much pretty much was a failure because I have nasturtium, and the pest destroyed them. So they're still there growing. Most of them died, but they're growing pretty large. Some of them just remain small. They're not flowering. My marigold, I have a few of them. Some of them are pretty large, like almost 2 feet, and they're not flowering. I have about three chrysanthemums, and one is flowering, and the other two pretty much aren't growing. So I don't know. I failed with the flowers this year, but I will try again next year. Yeah, so that was a failure with the flowers, but hopefully, yeah. See, I planted a lot of flowers and herbs this year, and they are loving it. Yeah, this year I actually planted more herbs than I usually do because I'm growing oregano, which I've never grown before. I'm growing two different type of mints. I usually grow just one. I have lemongrass. I've got, what else am I growing that I never usually grow? Well, I grew parsley last year for the first time. Have parsley this year. There are a few, I can't seem to remember the name of them. So I have quite a few herbs that I'm growing for the first time this year. But even those are being affected by this. So they're not doing as well as I would hope. They're not doing too badly, some of them, but others are not doing so well. So I don't know. Hopefully next year I'll have more fortune with them. Let's see. Nasturtium are used as trap crop to keep pests from your crops. Yes, and I know it is also edible, but I don't know, the flowers didn't seem to like me this year. Even my what's that called? Oh, my tulips that I planted, they started growing quite nicely, and I don't know if maybe because the weather was so up and down all over the place. But they started growing nicely. I had quite a few of them growing, but then only two of them produced flowers. I was so disappointed. And then they started dry down so early, but then I had so many different pests to deal with this year. They could be part of the reason. Yeah, hopefully next year it will be better for me where flowers are concerned. I'm going to be trying to get my hands on some different types of flowers this year as well. And then there are so many flowers these days. I learned that you have to be careful what type of flowers you actually get. If you're getting flowers to act as to attract pollinators or to attract beneficial insects, then you need to read the label carefully. I didn't even know that you have to be reading the labels carefully because there are those people who don't want to have bees in the yard and they don't want to have whatever type of insects in the yard. And so some farmers have actually been modifying these plants so that they will produce the flowers, but then the flowers won't actually attract these beneficial insects, which is rather disappointing because I mean, what is the purpose of having it there if it all it is just something looking pretty? But I guess to each his own. Yes, so now when I'm buying seeds, I'm gonna have to pay close attention to that as well to make sure that I get the ones that have the little insect photos on them so that I will know that those will attract the beneficial insect. But it is sad that they have to go to such levels to try and keep out these beneficial insects. Anyway, I think if there are no other comments that I am going to be ending the live pretty soon. So thank you guys for taking part. Okay, let's see. Melanie says, I planted basil for the first time this year and already have a point of dry leaves. and another set drying. Oh, nice. Yes, I planted basil for the first time this year too. I started some indoors. That was a total fail. Nothing germinated. Started some outdoors and nothing germinated. Started another set. I tried the sweet basil and the lemon basil. Nothing germinated the second time around. So I tried some in my potato beds because they said it does well with potatoes. And they were there for almost 2 months before they germinated. I don't know why. And the ones that did germinate, even now, I don't think any of them is any taller than 3 inches. Then I started some in containers, and the ones that I started in containers germinated rather fast. And for the most part, they're doing well, but then these leaf hoppers are affecting them. No, I've never really used basil apart from if I buy mixed seasoning, powder seasoning that has it in there. But to say use basil, the leaves or anything of the sort, I've never really used it before. I have one plant in one of my raised bed that is pretty big. I think it is maybe about a foot and a half at the moment. So I'm thinking of starting to use from that one. Let's see. LP says I planted a decent amount of flowers this year as well. Okay, nice. Did they do well? Let's see. And I let many plants stay in flower. Okay. My mints are flowering. Oh, and I think that big basil that I just mentioned, it is flowering as well. So I think I might have to start clipping it now because I don't want it to be focusing on flowering, or else I won't be able to get a lot of foliage from it. Let's see. LP says calendula is great. I highly recommend it. My plants now have so many flowers, and their seeds are really, really easy to harvest. Okay, I don't really know what that looked like either. I know that they said it is a good companion plant for some vegetables, but I've never really seen it. Don't know what it looks like. Okay, let's see. Oh, you love basil. Okay. Well, my when I started the seeds in pot, the last set that I've tried, the sweet basil, quite a few of them germinated. I still have some of them in the pot, even though it's a tiny pot. Some I've transplanted. And then I bought some Italian basil from one of the garden centers. So the one that I said I have that is about a foot and a half, that is the Italian basil. Yes, the lemon basil, I only have one plant of it from all those that germinated because the pests kill most of them. And that one is so small, I think it may be about 4 inches now. And I planted that so long ago, but yeah, we'll see what happens with it. I'm trying to nurture it so that it will actually grow a lot bigger so I can actually start using it. Let's see, LP says, I have many plants around the garden. I noticed Japanese beetle on the cinnamon basil, but not on the dark opal. Oh, okay. Cinnamon basil. Never heard of that one. Would be interesting to see what that one tastes like. Okay. And Melanie says, I planted it to make my own tomato sauce. Okay. I've never made tomato sauce, but I want to make tomato ketchup, but I don't know. I'm kind of worried this year for my plants. They looking at them, they kind of look okay, but then with the problem from the pests, they are not producing the way they should. And then with the lack of pollinators and stuff. And then for some of the garden that I actually had it too much compost too, so some of the plants are not flowering as much as they want. Because this year I'm planning to make some ketchup from my tomatoes, from my Roma tomatoes, but then they are not flowering as much as I would expect them to. So I don't know what my harvest is going to be like. Hopefully, it will be enough for me to get some for my ketchup. I don't usually make tomato sauce. I usually just take the tomatoes and freeze them once I've harvested and they can't last long. Then I'll just freeze them. They last pretty long when I do. Okay, you think I like them? Okay, you have a couple of different kinds. I'll post an Instagram picture. I don't have your Instagram account, or at least not as far as I know. Okay, let's see. My flowers did do well. I started the calendula indoors, then transplanted. I also bought some pansies on clearance at the store, and they are still blooming very happily. I planted nasturtium indoors. Okay, nice. You know what's crazy? I hear that because of the many heat waves that we have been having this summer, most of the garden centers were actually selling out their plants like dirt cheap. Plant that usually they sell for $10, they would have it for $1. Some even for like 80 odd cents, 90 odd cents. And I missed all of that. Yeah, I missed out on all of that because I didn't know they were having sale because I haven't been to the garden center in a while because I cannot drive with my hand. So I missed out on all of that and I'm so disappointed because I hear that some really nice flowers and some nice vegetables were there going for less than nothing. So disappointment, but I guess that's life. Let's see. Healthy says. And I direct sowed some in the garden beds. They are really going crazy right now. I planted the flowers on the edge of the beds. My amaranth are flowering now too. Oh, and the zinnias from from Bellina blend. Okay, that's nice. Yeah, my amaranth have gone. A lot of them are seeding, but I don't want them to seed. So I have one plant that I'm allowing to go into seeding, and then the rest of the amaranth I am. Whenever I see seeds coming off, I just break it off because what I'm interested in is getting the callaloo to eat, not the seeds. So for that reason, I break off the seeds as soon as I see them start growing. And this year, hopefully, I'll have a lot of callaloo seeds because I hear that it is actually nice in smoothies. So I'm going to be harvesting. Hopefully, I'll have enough that I can use in smoothie. And then I want to use them in cakes as well. We'll see. Urban Girl says, I have been on a dehydrating frenzy lately. Oh, nice. I I don't do a lot of dehydrating either. No, that was last year, 2019. 2019, I did a bit of dehydrating, but I was dehydrating things like peas and beans and turning them into powder. Yes, because I wanted to do some experiment with them. But I've never really done a lot of dehydrating. But it is something that I would like to get into. Yeah, because the main reason why I think of dehydrating stuff is because I would like to make dry produce that you can actually eat on the go. So, like for emergency go bag to ensure that you have a balanced meal. So that is why I consider dehydrating because then you can prepare some meals, whether powdered form or whatever, that you have your seasoning and whatever in. So in case of emergency, you can just grab that and go. Especially living in our region here, Saskatchewan, because there is no backup plan in our region. Whatever little backup plan the government has in place is not enough to preserve life if anything should go bad, should go wrong. If there is power outage for 3 days, if not even 3 days, if there's power outage for one full day in the winter, the Saskatchewan will be empty of people except for maybe a few. And if there should have anything like for whatever reason food cannot be transported into the supermarkets, there'll be dead people all over the place because there is no backup plan. And then it's not as if you can grow things year round here. You can only grow things for 3 months, and the little space that you have is not even enough to grow enough to last you for 3 months. So yeah, it's kind of crazy living in this region. A friend of ours that was born and raised in this region says, I think the only people who should be allowed to live in Saskatchewan is hardened criminal. You send them here as punishment. And if he's saying that and this is where he was born and grew up, I don't know what I should think. But yes, that is why I do think of dehydrating food, because it makes sense. Let's see. I have a lot of chocolate mint. Anyone knows what I can do with it? Did it produce seeds, Melanie? Can you send me some of the seeds? And if it doesn't produce seeds, can you send me some of the suckers? I would definitely like that, because the pineapple mint, the cinnamon mint, and the chocolate, I want to try those. I've never really seen them, never tried them, but I would really like to try it. So if you have seeds and you can send them to me, I'd be very happy. You can use it to make tea, or like you're drinking your water, you can use it to flavor your water. Yeah, but I'd like to try it. Let's see. LP says, just started blooming last week or two. Then there is my borage around the yard and marigold. Okay. Oh, so that's you. I didn't know that, LP. I didn't know that was you actually. I've always been wondering who it was, but I didn't know. Okay. Melanie says, I freeze the ones I am cooking with. Okay. Okay. Let's see. LP says chocolate milk is so nice. I would really like to get a dehydrator. Then Urban Girl says, Melanie, I make tea with mine. I haven't had time to experiment much. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'd really like to get my hands on some of that though. I want to get the pineapple. I was actually trying to get the pineapple mint seeds, but I wasn't able to source any. Hopefully next year I'll be able to source, because I like mint. Anything to do with mint, the mint plant. So I would like to grow all the varieties if I had the space. I just would have to be careful because they are so invasive. I'd have to make sure I keep them in containers. Let's see. LP says, oh no, that's such a bummer. I've heard big box stores are marking plants down 50% now since the season is coming to a close. Yeah, I don't even know if any of these stores, these garden centers, have any plants left because they were just selling everything out. Okay, Melanie says she will try to make tea with it. Urban Guild says, I have been dehydrating marigold, calendula, chamomile, bachelor button, sunflower petals, stevia, and more. You're on a roll. Never heard of the bachelor button. The calendula, is it edible? What do you use it for? Let's see. Urban Girl says her dehydrator was about 40 bucks on Amazon. Okay. Melanie would like to have a dehydrator. I actually bought one in 2019, and based on the description, it was rather ideal. I actually loved it, but then I had to send it back because it said that the trays in it were actually highly carcinogenic, and I don't. It doesn't make sense to me to be trying to be healthy and be buying a product that is going to be cancerous. So I sent it back. So I always think of getting another one. I have a dehydrator, but it is a part of my air fryer, so I can't really dehydrate a lot in it. That one that I got was not cheap either, but it had quite a lot of shelves. I think it had either 6 or 8 shelves, and it was almost 400 bucks. Yeah, I agree with you, LP. A dehydrator for 40 bucks is very cheap. LP say, yes, that's me. Okay. Melanie says, I thought it was a flower because of the color. I will definitely send you some seeds. Okay, I definitely appreciate that. Okay, use it for tea blends and baking. Okay, interesting. I'd like to try that too. Oh, hi, Stacy. You guys keep calling each other sis, Stacy and Urban Girl. Are you biological sisters? Okay, so calendula is edible. I have videos up on beneficial flowers. Okay, I'll have to look that up. Let me jot that down so I don't forget. Ha. All right. Let's see. Okay, they're just saying greeting. I have been using it for 2 years. I love it. Oh, that's good. That's good. That means it's working well for you. Okay, your sister is true God. Okay. Let's see. Melanie says, I have to check out Amazon for that price. Planning on doing lots of canning. Oh, okay. That I've never done either. Canning. Yeah, I guess even that I was planning on doing, or at least thinking of, not planning, thinking of doing, but I can't find time to do anything. Yeah, I cannot find, I'm always lots of plans, but that's as far as it goes because there's just not enough time in a day. My worm book that I'm supposed to be writing, I haven't reached anywhere with it because there's just no time to get anything done. Okay, Melanie. You're telling Melanie to look up the Presto dehydrated. Okay. I agree with you, Stacy. There is a lot to do every day. I don't think we can fit all the things that we want to do in a day. It's just impossible. There's just so much. And every time you look as if you're going to accomplish your task for the day, you look and you find something else that needs to be done. Yeah, I can't wait for the day when we will have enough time to get the things that we need to done in a day or have less to do in a day then. Oh yeah, definitely. I can't work without a schedule. I have to have a schedule, but even sometimes you schedule things, and the method that I use when I'm making a schedule is I will take note of how long it takes to do a particular project and then use that to schedule my day. But even so, there is just so much that needs to be done that it is practically impossible to get everything done in the day. And then there is always those miscellaneous things that you didn't plan for that come up and cause you to change your schedule somewhat. So it's hard, but at least like you rightly said, urban girl, when you work with a schedule, you are guaranteed to get far more done than when you don't. Okay, you love Canon Melanie. Did a lot for the first time last year. Nice. Always have something to give the kids and friends. Yeah, true. It's nice to have things to share. For us, it is wine. My hubby makes the wine. And then they come and everyone that comes always looking for the wine because does a wide variety of wine. So how are you guys garden doing? Are they doing okay? Are you having issues with a lot of pests, or are you satisfied with how your garden is performing this year? Let's see. Urban Girl says, I have 5 kids. I have to have a schedule or I'll go crazy with no time for myself. Yes. I have three and I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it can be crazy. The oldest moved out now, but I have the two little ones. And even just if I'm to focus on them, but I'll never get anything done. Yeah, and it's definitely hard to have time for yourself unless you work with a schedule and make sure that when you're planning, you plan for yourself. And then sometimes we say, okay, we have so much to do that it doesn't even, you don't want to take time out for yourself, but if you don't, you end up burning out at the end of the day, which doesn't benefit the rest of the family. So we might as well just make sure that each week we put aside a little time for ourselves. See, I'm hoping my tomatoes bounce back from the flooding we had last month. They were so stressed, not putting on much food. Yeah, I hope they do well for you too. Stacy says, I feel you, Kiki. Yes, it is crazy. The weather this year is it's just all over the place. Yeah, but at least we'll be able to harvest some of what we plant, even if we don't get what we're looking for. But as long as we're able to reap some benefit, then I guess I'd be satisfied. Yeah, I'm quite disappointed with how my brassicas turned out this year. I was looking forward to having tons of Chinese cabbage and my romaine lettuce. Because last year I didn't plant romaine lettuce. I'm planting it for the first time this year, but then last year I planted Chinese cabbage, and I don't know what kind of pest or some disease that destroyed it. Thankfully, I was harvesting it using the cut and come again method. So because of that, I got to harvest some. But if I was depending on it to turn into a cabbage head to harvest, I would have been so disappointed because The tree plants that I had last year, something go went into the middle of the plant and start eating it. At least I think that's what happened. And then the stem of the plant just rotted out. It just rotted out just like that. So I'm assuming it's some insects or some pests that caused it. So I was quite disappointed. But this year I tried planting a lot. Some of them because of the leaf hoppers, they didn't reach anywhere. And then the tree that I have remaining, now I see that I have the cabbage moth and their larvae eating down the plant. So it's my brassicas this year are not very happy. Even my red Russian kale, I'm so disappointed. Last year I had far more than I could manage. Just 6 plants, but then because I'm using the cut and come again method, it was just producing like crazy. But this year I have about 4 plants and I haven't been able to harvest anything from them because of these pests. And then usually I would treat them with the what's that little powder called? The diatomaceous earth. Yes, I would use the diatomaceous earth to treat them, but the applicator that I have for the diatomaceous earth, I cannot use it at the moment. So yeah, I'm having a tough time trying to get these pests under control. And as soon as you get one under control and you get all excited that yes, I get that one under control, there comes another one. So it's been crazy, but at least I'm still harvesting stuff, so I guess I won't complain. And I started harvesting early this year, so I guess I still have to be thankful. And more than anything else that I'm happy for is my sweet potatoes and the way they are doing because I tried growing sweet potatoes last year. I had quite a few slips, but I was quite disappointed because the spider mites, no, was the aphids that destroyed the crop. But this year, I started early indoors and the plants seem to be doing pretty well, so I'm happy for that. Hopefully, though, I don't see just a nice, luscious plant and then not reap anything because I would be so disappointed. I probably would cry. Mm, let's see. Let's see. Urban says, I am hoping. Okay, I read that one already. Um, Urban Girl says, yes, Stacy, thank God for the garden. Yep, that's how I feel too. Let's see. Did you start new seeds for the fall? Well, for me, once I've harvested what I have in the garden, that is the end of it for me because our growing season here is about 3. Sometimes we might get 4 months, and on a rare occasion, you might go a little bit over 4 months, but usually 3 months or so is what you get to grow anything. So I can't even do any succession planting. Lettuce I can do succession planting with, but because it is so hot, it doesn't make sense because I keep trying and it's not going anywhere. Let's see. Melanie says the birds are eating my tomatoes. I have to pick them as they start to turn. Oh, no, you're scaring me. I wonder, and I'm hoping I won't have to do that because the birds ate all of my cherries and my Saskatoon berries and all of my strawberries. So if they turn on my tomatoes, then that is it. I'm gonna find ways to get rid of them. Yeah. Thankfully, though, I haven't been seeing a lot of the magpies in the last 2 weeks. So hopefully, hopefully, then the rest of the birds won't affect my plants because I've always had all the other birds and I've never really had an issue with them eating off my produce. But with the magpies around, these birds just decimate everything. So thankfully, I'm not seeing a lot of them anymore. Let's see, Stacy says, I tell you, sis, the garden is really what releases our minds. Yes, so true. So true. These days that I can't do much. I just go outside sometime and just sit and just look at the garden. And it is, I don't know, what is it about it that is so relaxing, but it is very relaxing, that and taking care of my worms. Let's see. Let's see. LP is asking Urban Girl if she bakes with calendula. Okay. What do you bake with the calendula? Okay, Urban Girl says yes. As soon as they start blushing, you gotta snatch them off the plant. Excuse me. Okay. Well, I will keep an eye out and see if the birds are affecting the tomatoes. If they're affecting it, then I'm gonna have to use that method as well, because after all the fruits that they have taken for themselves, I can't afford for them to take any more. Especially my tomatoes. I can forgive them for the Saskatoon berries and the cherries, not for my strawberries though. But definitely there'll be no forgiveness if they go on to my tomatoes. Let's see. LP says, Urban Girl, thank you for the dehydrator recommended. I could do a $40 right now. Let's see. Urban Girl says, LP with the marigold mostly has decoration. Okay. The calendula I use for tea. Okay. Okay, Melanie. LP is asking Melanie if she used the water bath or pressure can. LP says my brassicas are okay right now. Last year, my only brassica was riddled with cabbage loopers and cabbage moth caterpillars. Okay, well, I'm glad that you're having success this year. It can be so frustrating when all these pests decide to take over the garden. I agree with you, LP. Definitely, I could definitely use a heated greenhouse. And the sad thing is that I cannot build one because the government have restrictions on how much of your own property you can actually build on. Yes, and once you reach that limit, they won't allow you to put anything else on it. So I cannot build myself a heated greenhouse, sadly. If I was living on an acreage, then yes, I could build myself a greenhouse. Yeah, that was the biggest mistake that we made when we came here, getting a property in the city. I don't know. Well, we did ask around, ask the locals, like, what do they recommend? Because I mean, we're new to the area, so we figured the locals will know what's best. So we asked them out of an acreage and city buying a house in the city, what would they recommend? And most of them says, okay, don't get the acreage, get the house in the city, because with the snowfalls that we get here and the government don't clean the acreages, they only clean the main roads, and then you are going to have a lot of work because acreages are a lot of work. So we listened to them and bought ourselves a house in the city, and that was a big mistake because the amount of restrictions that they have in the city, it might as well be a prison that you're living in. You can't do this in your yard, you can't do that in your yard. They tell you how many pets you can have. They tell you how many chickens you can raise, three and a half chicken. Who can raise half a chicken? Yeah, so it's crazy living in the city. To me, that love my freedom and like to build things and stuff like that, it is just like living in a prison. You're free to go anywhere in the prison, but that's as far as it goes. Yeah, so that was a mistake on our part asking the locals for advice, because the Canadian culture, or at least let me not say Canadian, let me say Saskatchewan culture then, is do as little as you can So they don't, if they can avoid doing any work, they're not going to be doing it. Raking, they come, if you have to rake your yard every day, it is a bother for them. For us as Jamaicans, you rake your yard every day or you sweep your yard every day, depending on what type of yard you have. The work that they complain about is just the norm. It's no big deal. So getting an acreage would have been ideal for us, and then I could have my greenhouse. But now I'm stuck here in the city with no greenhouse. Yeah, I would love to have a greenhouse. If I was on an acreage, I would build my house and the greenhouse would be attached to my house and it would be heated. It would be, oh, I would have tropical plants, fruits, and stuff. I can just see it now. Yeah, well, anyway, I guess it's too late for me with that. Yeah, let's see. Urban Girl says, I just harvested my last two red cabbage from spring planting last week. Oh, nice. I planted six of those, six of the red cabbage, but they're growing, but not as fast as I would expect them to. And I see that now I'm starting to see the cabbage worms on them. So I'm going to have to be monitoring them quite often to ensure that I at least be able to harvest some of them. But that's nice. See, Melanie says the tree pumpkin died, and when I cut the vine, I see worms inside. Good thing the pumpkin was good enough to use. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, my dear. Oh yes, speaking of which, let me jot this down again. I need to, just to be on the safe side, since as I have so many squash plants this year, I don't want to end up with those pumpkin borers or whatever they're called. So I need to protect the plants. I'm told that if you put foil paper around the close to the root of the plant, then you can actually prevent the pumpkin borers from actually entering into the plant. So I'm gonna try that just to be on the safe side because I'd really like to harvest some squash this year. Last year the season ended before I was able to harvest any, and I'm a bit concerned this year because although I see a few squash on the plants, they are so tiny, and if our growing season end by early September, then I'm doomed. Let's see, LP says my backyard, where my garden is located, is very, very overgrown with a lot of wood. Oddly enough, I've not had trouble with birds or rabbits, but they're there. Oh, okay, well, that's nice. That's nice. Okay, you use the water bath to can Melanie. Okay. CLP says, then and again, my tomatoes are just coming around. Few ripes tomato yet. Okay. Okay. LP says she water bath canned salsa for the first time last year. This year we've done pickles so far. Okay, interesting. When you do water bath or the pressure can, does one last longer than the other, or do they last pretty much around the same amount of time? Let's see, LP says the squash vine borer got my pumpkin. Huh. They are the bane of my existence. Oh, my sweet meat winter squash is dying because of them. I hope the rest of my plants will make it. Yeah, I hope they make it healthy. Okay, Melanie did salsa as well last year. He says, congrats on your cabbage, Kiki. I sowed seeds in Nor for all my brassicas, then neglected to plant them out, but managed to keep them alive. So planted out in June. Okay, nice. Okay, Melanie, you're not brave enough to do pressure canning yet. Yes, Stacy, there is so many restrictions here. It is ridiculous. They tell you how tall your grass can be, how close you can have anything to close to your fence, or how far from your building you can have anything, and if you're storing things where in a yard you can store it. They regulate practically everything. Pretty soon they might start telling you how many times a day you can eat and what you can eat. But I'm the one who came to their place, so if I don't like it, all I have to do is take myself away. Yes, my dear, three and a half chicken. I don't know how you raise half a chicken, but I guess they have it figured out. CLP says, I'm afraid the pressure can too, but multiple people have told me it's not that bad and that I should try it. Don't be afraid, they say. Urban Girl says, thank you, LP. We had usually cool weather. We had unusually cool weather. We went from heat in the spring to non-stop rain to nights in the 40s and 50s. We've just warmed up in New York. Wow. Yeah, sound as if you have it all over the place. Let's see. Um, Urban Girl says, Melanie, I'm with you. What about canning? Only for now. Okay. Urban Girl says, red cabbage takes forever. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks for telling me that. I thought maybe something was wrong with it, why it is taking so long. LP says, oh my urban girl, that's some crazy weather. In Michigan, we went from winter to summer, no springy, it seemed. Then we had a load of rain as well. It was like it all came at once. Uh, we got so much rain, and I'm here begging for the rain. We didn't get any spring either. It was just even the sprinklers usually would have spring temperatures. This year we had in our spring temperatures we're getting 30 degrees Celsius, which is something we don't usually get until maybe late July into August. But we had like 31, 32 degrees Celsius in spring, in May, which is rather crazy. And we're having snow. We had snow in May as well. So I don't know. Yeah, we didn't get the spring, but I'm just hoping that at least praying that we'll have an extended summer so that I can get to harvest pretty much everything in the garden, because even though I get to plant out things fairly early in the garden, but with the weather being up and down, it kind of stunned the plants, and then with all the pest issue, that kind of stunned the plants. So like now when the plants are trying to recover and start producing, I'm kind of worried that maybe some of the things I won't be able to harvest, but we'll see. I'll just keep on doing my best, and whatever happens happens, because there's only so much that I can do, right? Let's see. LP says, I failed to protect the stem of my squash and pumpkin, but my pumpkin I planted kind of late. Okay, so does that mean that the pumpkin is doing okay then? Let's see. LP says, apparently it is also better for less acidic. Oh, no, I think I missed something. LP says supposedly pressure canning lasts longer. Apparently, it is also better for less acidic things like canning beans. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, see, Urban Girl says, it was so nice chatting with you guys. Got to go get the little ones to bed. Happy growing. Same to you, my dear. Take care. Enjoy talking with you as well. Have a good night. See, Melanie says, I think it depends on what you are canning. Okay. And Stacy is wishing Urban Girl blessings. Yeah, he'll be saying good night as well. Hi, Russell. Oh, you just flooded the upstairs bathroom. I'm sorry about that. I hope it doesn't damage your floor and cause you to have to do any repairs. The ceiling for the living room is falling down. I left the water on. Yeah, so sorry about that. Yeah. Well, these days I've been doing crazy things too. Fortunately, I'm doing them in the basement, so at least the damage is minimized. And then, because I've using the slab sink downstairs and leave the pipe on to go and do something else and end up, thankfully, where the slab sink is, close beside it, there is water sensor there, so the alarm went off in time to prevent us from flooding the basement. But yeah, so sorry that you flooded your your upstairs bathroom. I hope it won't cost too much to repair. Let's see, LPs, okay. Hmm. LP says, oh shoot, Russell, that's terrible. I hope you have help dealing with that. Oh, the living room is flooded too. I cannot believe I forgot the water running. It happens, we are humans and we're usually busy, so it's easy for us to forget things from time to time. Yeah, we're just hoping that the damage isn't too bad. If I was close by, I would help you with the repairs since as I love construction. See, Melanie says, Russell, sorry for that. CLP says, I think the pumpkin will make it through. That's good. I see a few tiny vines that appears to have some more damage. Okay. Hopefully this week I can catch up in the garden. Yeah, I hope you'll be able to catch up too. Yeah. I'm stretching my lazy bone. Let's see. LP says, I forgot I had my water running outside yesterday, but outside is okay. It's easily done. Oh, I do it. Well, outside, I do that like all the time. Like, once I'm watering the front lawn, I forget about it all the time. And sometimes, if my husband is not around, it can run for a very long time. And then if he's around, you because of what they use, the material they use to build the houses here. If the pipe is on outside, you can stay inside and know that the pipe is on. So sometimes it's like, Marsh, how long are you gonna run the water for? But yes, I do forget the ones outside. Like that's the norm. Practically every week I forget about it. Thankfully, it's not long enough that we can end up with some exorbitant bill. But yes, there's so much to keep us distracted these days that it's easy to forget something. The CLP says, I know some sheep farmers who said once they were running fresh water in the trough in a barn. Instead of watching it, they did some other stuff and totally forgot until the next day. Holy moly. I wouldn't want to pay that bill. And the poor sheep. Yeah, but that's crazy. Yeah, and I think my daughter did something, my youngest daughter, she did something like that a few months ago where she was doing the dishes, and I don't know what she stopped to do because anytime she has anything to do, she always goes to play. And then I heard my husband screaming, Marsh, what's going on upstairs? Because the water started running over in the sink and running down the stairs to the basement. It's crazy. These things do happen. We are imperfect, so we can't expect perfection from ourselves. It's just a pity that the language can be very costly from time to time. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I'm going to be saying goodbye. I'm getting tired. Yeah, it was a mess. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna be saying goodbye. It was nice talking with you guys. I hope to see you again on Friday, all being well. Stay safe and have a lovely evening. The same to you, Healthy. Take care, Stacy. Good night, everyone.